Today we're fortunate to have camper number 11980, Henry Stifel from New York City, as our speaker. Henry came to camp from 1976 through 1980, starting as a cub in Rensselaer and later serving as an aide in Adirondack. In 1982, as a high school junior, Henry was paralyzed in a car accident. For many, this might have meant the end of dreams of college and a career. But for Henry, it was just the beginning. Watching a segment on CBS 60 Minutes, he discovered that Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, was pioneering a project in electrical stimulation for paralysis patients. He told his parents immediately, "That's where I want to go to college." And that's just what he did, becoming a regular in the biomedical research lab and one of the critical pioneers of the FES, Functional Electric Stimulation Bike, that was developed there at college. Henry transferred to William and Mary College, where he trained in the gym next to the football team on his FES bike. He graduated from the business school with a finance degree and landed a job at Morgan Stanley in New York as an analyst in the public finance department. He remains with the firm today, where he's a senior vice president in their private wealth management division. Henry has devoted much of his time to spinal cord research through his own Stifel Foundation, which became part of the American Paralysis Foundation. He also provided outreach through visits to newly injured patients, including Christopher Reeve, later becoming a board member and vice chair of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. While there's been tremendous growth in spinal cord research in the past 35 years, there is much more to be done. Says Henry, "It's so satisfying to be a part of this cause, to feel that we've really made a difference." It's a great privilege to have Henry here with us this morning. Please join me in welcoming camper number 11980, Henry Stifel.
Yo-ha, Camp Dudley. There we go. It's so amazing to be with all you guys this morning on the shores of Lake Champlain in this beautiful chapel, in what I really, truly consider God's country. I too, as Matt just told you, was a camper for 5 straight years. And I have to tell you, if I hadn't ended up in this chair, I probably would have been here for at least another 5 years. But, as I'm sure many of you would agree, Dudley never leaves you. It's a community that seeps into your bones, stays with you for the rest of your life. It draws you in and never lets go. As mentioned, yes, my camper number is 11980. Anyone out there with any lower numbers out there? Can I have a show of hands or maybe another yo-ha? Huh? Can I hear it? Let's go. You see, Dudley's a community which stays with you for your entire life. If asked to define the concept of community, I would say community is a source of strength and energy we all benefit from. It's what defines us when we all come together as one, and it defines a set of values and purpose that we all carry forward throughout our lives. I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the many times that community came to my rescue throughout my life. So, I thought I'd start with a vivid memory of mine of the first day at Camp Dudley. It was mid to late June 1976 when I arrived at camp in my mother's big old station wagon to the top of Cub Alley. I was 11 years old, never been on camp before, and maybe knew 2 older campers. At that time, the main objective, after meeting Willie Schmidt, our camp director and ever energetic chief greeter, was to find Rensselaer cabin. Could I have a shout out, Rensselaer? Nice. and get my trunk and stuff into what was going to be my new home for the next 4 weeks. Well, everything was going very well when all of a sudden my beloved Great Dane, whose name was George, jumped down to the back of the station wagon and took off. I was completely mortified, didn't know what to do. You see, our dog was essentially the size of a horse. If he was up here with me today, which I would love, and I know he would too, his head would be right about where the mic is right now. He was an incredible, loving, and social dog who loved people and really didn't appreciate his size. So here I am, an 11-year-old boy in a strange land, and George just disappeared. I remember jumping into action, running up to what I later learned was Cub Diamond, and saw the vastness of the campus with all the cabins around the perimeter, but no dog. When all of a sudden, in the distance, running up from Swim Point, comes George. Dodging, darting, jumping into one cabin and out the next. Behind him, only a growing crowd of campers chasing him. I was so happy he was not lost in the woods, but now what? He was having the time of his life, and the crowd was only growing. Can you envision this, guys? Well, I was probably more embarrassed and nervous than ever when suddenly I noticed everyone, the entire crowd, began to work in unison. Instead of just running behind him, half the crowd broke off to the left, the other half broke off to the right. They corralled him in, and George knew the gig was up. At that time, he rolled onto his back, and I watched as he was smothered with love and then brought back to my mother and I. I knew at that instance that this was a great community of people where everyone did their best to lift and support their fellow friends and campers. The Dudley spirit was truly alive that day, and I knew at that time if my dog was going to be safe here, then this was a community I wanted to be a part of. For me, this place represents endless support, encouragement, and camaraderie that is so special. It's a community which is not just about geographically close to someone, but rather it's a place where we all feel connected and are responsible for what happens. As a camper, this community encouraged me to try new things, meet new people, and try to learn something new about myself. If things didn't work out exactly how I wanted it, I knew everything would be just fine. Hiking, canoeing, playing the part of a girl in The Big Show, sketching all summer of my junior year after I broke my foot on the first day of camp were all new experiences to me. The sense of community was always ever present and allowed me to be comfortable with my insecurities and be reflective with my fellow campers. Shared experiences and differences strengthen our community and increase our self-confidence. When the common good is shared among all, it becomes a power that can lend incredible support to anyone who has fallen on hard times and facing what seems to be insurmountable challenges. So as Matt mentioned, when I was 17, I was in a car accident which resulted in a spinal cord injury, leaving me paralyzed from the shoulders down. As you can imagine, at that time I was more scared and vulnerable than any other time in my life. I had no idea what was going on and how I was going to get to the next day, and whether I would even survive. It was going to take inner strength and focus and a will, which frankly, I didn't know if I possessed. I was scared, and I did not know if I could do this alone. For the first 2 weeks, I couldn't move anything and was on a ventilator. At that time, obviously, the goal was just to make it to the next day. I then, thankfully, stabilized and started to get a little healthier and was able to sit up. And at that time, I realized the next day was going to be possible. But it was still incredibly difficult to have any thought about the future. You see, just before my accident, I felt on top of the world. But in an instant, that was all taken away from me. I was starting all over again. and I didn't have any mentors to follow. I thought my days would be completely absorbed by medical care and that my dreams of graduating with my high school class and going away to college would never materialize. I had no idea how I would regain control of my life and my own destiny. As I said, I needed to summon the will to move forward, but I was afraid to do it alone. I was afraid of failure and didn't know where to begin. But this all changed. It changed after the incredible outpouring of love from the community at large. The community came to the rescue of me and my family. It was my saving grace, and through the safe grace of God, they were there to lift me up. Nobody knew the magic formula for how I could regain control of my new reality. But like it was for my first day of camp, the community was there to lend a compassionate ear and encouragement that gave me the strength to find ways to move forward. You see, when everyone wants you to succeed, you can never fail. Coretta Scott King, the wife of Martin Luther King, stated, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members." Her statement is so powerful and truly reminds me of how fortunate I am to come from such supportive communities. I really think that quote is great. The greatness of a community is more accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. Well, the incredible response from my hometown, school, this camp, and so many other intertwined circles was amazing. It was the simple note, visit, words of encouragement, and so much more that reminded me daily that we could do this. It was a team. It was broad and endless support that constantly surprised me and my family. From all my friends sending their love on day one, to notes from the shores of Lake Champlain, to my parents and their friends who immediately sought out to create a foundation to raise monies to try to find a cure for paralysis caused by spinal cord injuries. Everyone once again in my life was moving in unison. The response of the community gave me strength and quieted my fears. My experiences of being a young man confronted with what seemed to be insurmountable challenges quickly taught me that humanity is our ultimate community. So many things that seem unattainable and insurmountable become possible when the community comes together. Fast forward to today. The community-based foundation, which was started after my accident, became known as the American Paralysis Association and then the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. It's become the largest support center for anyone with any form of paralysis, and after decades of financial support and research investment, people are now being given so much better odds of regaining much of their physical deficits. We become a vast community who's there to catch any new family who instantaneously is confronted with the same situation. The foundation is there to be a partner with anyone who is facing overwhelming challenges. We are a community that strives to empower our newest members. Back in the 80s, or actually back in the late 90s, I was asked to meet with a newly paralyzed individual. I was very used to playing the role of mentor by this point in my life, so despite leaving later that afternoon for a flight overseas, I was very glad to fill the request of my rehab doctor to meet with a newly injured individual. Well, I remember it like it was yesterday, rolling into this unknown character's hospital room. To my surprise, I found two people in one bed. I was ready to introduce myself and offer up my friendship and guidance when the man turned to me and looked directly at me with a set of steely blue eyes, which seemed to look right through me. I knew at that instant it was Superman, and he was lying in bed with his Lois Lane, his wife, Dana. Christopher Reeve, who I'm sure many of you do not know here today, was the Superman of my generation, and I couldn't believe I was sitting there in front of him. He was an invincible character who unfortunately had just suffered a spinal cord injury as a result of a horse riding accident. He was a well-known and respected actor who was dealt a difficult hand while at the top of his career. Chris could have taken so many directions with his fame. But after taking the time to understand his new normal, he chose to be a real Superman and champion the cause. The communal support provided him with the power and determination to make a difference. A few years after this first meeting, Chris proposed merging our two foundations because he recognized, and we all recognized, that together we would be even more effective with our role of supporting the spinal cord injury community. I will always be grateful to him and his wife, Dana, for being real superheroes and putting this cause on the map. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite quotes from Chris. It states, "So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, and then we summon the will, they soon become inevitable." This quote represents for me my journey through life and what the community, this community, did to help me to gather the strength to move forward. So I ask you today to continue to build this community. Embrace each other, worship each other's friendships and support. Seek out those you don't know and make them your family. When we all come together, we create an environment that allows any camper and any individual to try new things and take on life's challenges. As one, anything that seems impossible or improbable truly becomes inevitable and achievable. I will always cherish the support I received from this camp from the first day I arrived to today. So be proud of who you are, where you come from, and embrace those around us. Amen.